Okay, just gonna carry on in the same vein as I know you mightn't be watching it in the order, but I made the long division one, the long division video recently, and I'm just kind of carrying on from there. That the idea is I'm just gonna do a um few questions, and hopefully you can kind of just see, you can try them yourself, and you can kind of just see what you're doing right or wrong. Hopefully you can pause it, do it, give it a shot, and then see what I've done, and just see if you got it right, see if you got it wrong. It's going to be with the minus b formula, which is it's kind of the slang term. The real name of it would be the quadratic formula, the quadratic equation, whatever way. Most of the people that I would be doing maths with would know it as the minus b formula, but there have been people from other schools who have called it the actual fancy name. Um, but it is something everybody has to do: junior cert, honors, ordinary. I think in junior cert as well. I think does include this, and then in leaving honors and ordinary as well. The thing is, in junior cert and in leaving cert ordinary, sometimes it will just show up like it is on the screen at the minute. Hang on, actually. Yeah, sorry. It'll just show up the way it is, where it's just here is the quadratic. Here's an x squared. Here's an x, and here's a number. It's equals to 0. Solve, right? Whenever they say solve, they want to get x equals, and the way that you will solve something that has an x squared and x and a number is to use the minus b formula. Um, yeah, and they just give it to you in leaving cert honor level, and in some ordinary level cases. What will end up happening is, in the process of doing a question, they'll give you a question that looks nothing like this, and in the process of doing it, you'll end up stumbling across one. I didn't pick any of those. I picked out a lot of these questions are going to be from junior cert or yeah, junior cert ones, just because they're the most basic ones. They literally will just be like, here's the question, do it. Here's the question, do it. Here's the question, do it. In leaving cert though, it can be hidden, so I didn't want to find one of those because I'd have to go through the whole beginning of it to get to here. This video is just purely going to be supposedly aimed at doing the minus b formula. The first few are all going to be basic ones. Then I'm going to do one from leaving cert honors, because that there's one very specific style there that is just ramped up ever so slightly. And we'll see how it goes. We'll see what goes down. Yeah, there's something I want to say about it, but I'll say it when I'm doing it. I guess I'll just start straight away. So literally, don't forget, in your log tables it tells you that the minus b formula is minus b plus and minus, where there's a plus and a minus on top of each other, and that's just literally because we're too lazy to write it out twice. We're really supposed to write it out once with the plus there and once with a minus there, but we could not be bothered, so we just write it out once and then kind of say use one of these, and then secondarily use the second one. It's important to remember though, in the log tables as well, on page 20 of your log tables, on the right, I think, well, in English on the right, it says that the a, b, and c come from when your equation looks like this. So you have to make your equation look like this first before you can even find out the a, b, and c to sub into the formula. Sometimes they've thrown tricks at people where they say like ax squared plus bx equals to c is what they'll have in the question, but you'd have to do is move this across and make it a minus on this side instead, and then you can start, because then you'll notice it's equal to 0. Basically, get it equal to 0, and then you can use the formula in the log tables, right? Another thing, a, b, and c, you'll notice are the numbers in front of the letters. Do not include the letters. The x squared, and I know when I say letters, you're saying they're all letters. I know that. I'm sorry. Someone said that to me the other day, that I will do that. For me, the letter in this quadratic is the x. The a, b, and c in my head are numbers, right? And I know that's just weird, but that's the way it is. The a, b, and c are just numbers. The x's would be what I would consider the letter. So if I refer to the letter here, I'm going to be referring to the x's. If I refer to the numbers, I'm going to be referring to a, b, and c. Yeah, so the thing is though, so here, for example, well, you see here, we'll do this one right over here. This one, you'll notice what's in front of the x squared. It's a 2. That means the 2 is the a. The x squared is the x squared, and we don't care, because you notice here there's no room for the x squared. There is a room, however, for the a. So we take whatever the a is, and we're just going to sub it in. For this guy here, you'll notice that it's what's in front of the x. It's a 13, so therefore the b is 13. The x is there and the x is there, but there's no room in the or in the formula in the log tables to sub the x in. Do not put the letter x into it, okay? So all I'm going to do here is I'm going to identify my a, b, and c. Now here, this one was an actual junior cert one, and they do this very often to trick people. Don't forget, if there's no number in front of it, it's like there's a sneaky 1 there that we just don't write. It's like the way in English you might say, oh, I have a dog. You wouldn't say, I have one dog. You'd say, I have a dog. And it's kind of assumed because you didn't mention a number, it's just 1. And it's the same in maths. If there's no number mentioned, if it's just x squared, it's kind of assumed it's an x squared, which is 1x squared. If there's any other number, we'd put it in. It's not that there's a 0 here. It's not that there's another number that we don't know. It's that it's a 1, right? So in this scenario, a is equal to 1. B is the number in front of the x. Now, they try to trick people with this as well. You have to remember that it's not just a 4, it's the -4. The sign comes with it. If you want to here for the a, you could write the +1, but just it's never really done. So if it's a plus, you don't really need to write it in, but if it's a minus, you do. And in the same fashion, c is the number at the end. The number at the end is -7, so we'll do that. All I'm going to do now is write out the formula with a, b, and c filled in. Whenever you're subbing in for a letter, so you see the way there's a minus, I wrote down the minus, then there's a b. I'm going to sub in for the b, so I put brackets in. And I go and I say, oh, b was -4. The plus and the minus, I'm going to leave like that for the moment. We'll come back to him later. Subbing in for a b again. So instead of the b, I put brackets, and then I put -4 inside. -4, and then there's an a, so I'm going to put brackets, and that's a 1. And then there's a c, and I'm going to put brackets, and that's a -7. And then all over 2a, so I'm going to put in brackets, and that's a 1 again. Now, literally, do this on your calculator. Now, first off, for this specific question, you'd have to do it anyway, and I'll explain that as well. That's something else I want to hit on that I didn't really mention at the start. But there's a big thing at the moment where I think the teachers keep trying to tell you guys to try do as much of this as possible by yourself. Like literally do out the maths yourself. Try your hardest to, just do the bit inside the square root first, and then do the top part of the fraction first, and then do the bottom part of the fraction. Like I don't think that's true or correct. I think the problem is, because in my experience, there's nothing in the marking scheme that says, if they tried to do it themselves and they messed up further on, give them more marks than if they just tried it in the calculator. So there's no point. And secondarily, I think you guys, no offense, but you guys nowadays are not as good at doing this type of maths yourself, because you're so used to the calculator doing it. Your calculators can do a lot of stuff. And I think part of the problem is your teachers don't very often realize your calculator is so good that if you literally just type this in, you will get the correct answer. Like, I'm literally not going to do another bit of writing except for the answer that my calculator is going to tell me, and you're not going to be able to see me typing it in the calculator. But yeah, I do think that's a problem that a lot of the teachers kind of, I don't know, I cannot think of a reason why you wouldn't just type this in on the calculator yourself. It's far less likely to make a mistake. It's quicker. And the teachers might say, it's quicker just to do it yourself. It's quicker maybe for me or the teacher to do it ourselves. But I have not, in my experience, seen it quicker for you guys to do it. And I've seen you guys make more mistakes doing it yourself. So do try it on the calculator. When you're typing it into the calculator, where there's the plus minus, pick one of them to go first. Press equals, get your answer, write it down, and then go back in and change it to a minus. But yeah, there is no marking scheme there's no benefit to doing it. They might say, I'm trying to teach them how to do the numbers, but like at this point, when it's your actual exam, I genuinely couldn't care less. And some of the teachers are also saying try to avoid using the -b when you can, and I'll explain that in a second, because I'm going to finish this question because I'm just getting sidetracked too much. But while I was doing that, I typed it all in excuse me. I typed it all in the calculator, and I did it with a plus first. And when I type it in with a plus, one of my answers is, I forgot to press equals. Now it says 2 plus root 11. But you'll notice in the question it says give your answer to 2 decimal places. So I'm actually not going to write that. I'm going to get rid of him. And I'm going to actually press the SD, change it to decimals. Now I'm going to write it to full decimal so you can see what you would get in a calculator. And then I'm going to show you how to round it, because that's something else you guys are all bad at. 2479. Now it says 2 decimal places. That means I want to go all the way to 2 numbers after the decimal. So that there's a 3 and the 1. But we now have to look at the number directly after it, which is a 6, which is it if it's 5 or higher, you round up. So I'm going to round this to 5.32. Because kind of what we're saying here is this 16, is that closer to 10 or 20? It's closer to 20, so I put a 2 here. It's because it would then technically be like 20 here, but we're not. Maybe that's going in too deep. Basically, 2 decimal places, look at the next number. Oh, it's 5 or higher. That means the 2 decimal places have to be rounded up to the next number. But that's it. You do not look at any of this crap down here. You don't change the 3 at all. You just change this number here. That's supposed to be pointed at the 1. I know it's a bit wonky. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm literally just going to press the arrow buttons on my calculator, go back, and where the plus minus was, and I put in a plus originally, I'm going to change it to a minus. You get 2 minus root 11, or as a decimal, 1 minus 1.31662479. Again, round it to 2 decimal places means I want to go to the 3 1 again, which would be minus 1.32. So those are your 2 answers. You don't really even need this line. That was just me showing you how to round things. But that's it. That is it. That's the minus b formula. As far as nowadays how it should go. Your calculators are actual beasts. Don't try do it yourself. Literally write the A, B, and C. Write down the formula. Sub in the formula. Let your calculator do it. Everything that I have done, you don't need this maybe, but write this, these 2 things, and these answers, and that's what the mark. I'll show. Do you know what? I might pause it at the end if I remember and get a marking scheme up, and just show you what I mean by that. Another thing that I meant to say, or what I was trying to hint at, or what I was getting towards, was that sometimes the teachers will try to say to you, avoid the minus b formula altogether and do the other method. The other method would be like, let's say if you had x squared plus 3x plus 2, and you do it this way, you do the 2 brackets. Some people do guide number stuff, if you recognize either way, right? The way I was taught to do it would be to do this and have it like that, and then put each bracket equal to 0. Some people do a guide number way. I'm sorry that's going to cause a bit more confusion. I'm trying to show you what the teachers want you to do and why I disagree with it, to be totally honest with you. So the teachers will say to you, instead of, you could do the minus b formula using those numbers as your a, b, and c, assuming that's a is going to be 1, b would be 3, c would be 2, and you put that in the minus b formula to get the same answers. Some of the teachers want you to still do it this way, but there's no need to. You guys are not as good at that as myself or the teachers would be, partially because we do maths all day, every day, whereas you guys don't. Also, our calculators, a lot of the teachers are about the same age as me. Our calculators could not do square roots. They could not do fractions. We could not do the minus b formula anywhere near as clean. And I think a lot of the teachers still have that kind of ingrained in their memory that they just don't want to do it because it's so much longer to do, and it was longer for us to do it, and we had to learn it this way. But for you guys, you just say a is equal to 1, b is equal to 3, c is equal to 2. And that was quite fast when I did it there, but the numbers will very often be bigger. I picked the smallest numbers I could think of to make it easier for myself. And, I do maths all day, every day, so I would hope that I'm quicker at it than you guys. I've seen you guys try it, and then you try to get the factors, and you just can't quite figure it out, and it's all a bit of a mess. You'll notice that if I do the exact same thing, but instead I just assign the numbers as a, b, and c, sub them in. If I did that out, I'm not going to type it in my calculator. I know that sounds stupid after just telling you guys to do it. It would be 9 minus 8 over 2. Again, this is the thing. When you do maths every day, this is why your teachers tell you to do it the other way, because it's just quicker to do it ourselves. You guys, though, and I know this makes me sound like a dick, you guys just can't do it that fast. So don't do it. Do the calculator. I just want to show you that if you do the same thing, if you do the minus b formula, it's like doing the same thing as doing the brackets that I did on the left. And I'm kind of defeating my own point here, because I'm trying to prove that it's quicker to do the minus b, but I didn't write it in the calculator. So it makes it look worse. Just promise me that just trust me, sorry, that that's going to be minus 1, and that would be minus 2. And look, it's the same answers, right? Now, again, obviously, you won't have any of this. You will just use the minus b formula. You'd sub it into your calculator, and then you'd just be golden. You'll be good to go. So the minus b formula and the bracket way, whether you use my method or whether you use the guide number, where the guide number here, if you're doing it that way, would be 2. If you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. But if you're doing the guide number or the brackets way that I just did it, you could always use the minus b formula. in certain scenarios they will say the word factorize, and I want you to do it that way in junior cycle. But you could use it, and the teachers in leaving cert would still ask you not to do the minus b and to ask you to do it this way. And I just do not see the point of that, because I know I'm just kind of ranting now. This isn't really, but it's just, I'm literally just stressing to you guys, when you see a question like this, minus b, sub in answers. In these questions here, and here, you'll notice you wouldn't actually even been able to even do the brackets method, because they ask for decimal places. That's something else. If they ask for decimal places or surds, if they say correct the 2 decimal places or in surd form, surd is just a fancy word for the square root symbol, you have to use the minus b. There's no other way around it. You have to use the minus b. Surd or square root, or decimal places, you'd have to. I was gonna say one more thing. I feel like, so again, just to cover up my rant, basically, the teachers will tell you to use the minus b and to do it out long ways, like literally do it out like I did it down here. I don't recommend you doing it. I recommend you just subbing in and then putting in your calculator and getting your 2 answers. I think the teachers are kind of living in the past a bit, where it was harder for us to do it. So just, another thing I want to point out is, because here our quadratic had x's in it, it means that our 2 answers are x's. So we can say x is equal to here and x equals to here, and those are our final answers, right? I know I've made a bit of a mess of this. I'm going to do a few more though, and hopefully it'll be clearer, and I won't have to go through this rant every time. But yeah, those are your 2 answers. The whole point of this, while I'm doing it, is I'll do it I'll do this one now because I've been ranting too much. I'm going to do some more maths and then I'll rant afterwards about what's going on. I think that's everything I wanted to say about that bit though. Yeah, teachers want you to do it the old way. I don't agree. There's like one type of question they can ask in junior cert level where they specifically use the word factorize, where you do have to use that bracket method. But I'll talk about that in factorizing as well. Right, I didn't really want to go into that too much. I'll do another video for factorizing at some point, I promise. So look, you're in the junior cert, you see this, you see x squared x number equals to 0, give your answer to the 2 decimal places. They are all hints that you're going to use the minus b formula, right? Your job is to identify a, b, and c. A is the number in front of x squared, so a is 2. B is the number in front of x, so b is 13. And c is the number on its own, so it's minus 3. Again, don't forget the minus if it is there. The a and the b don't have minuses, so I didn't include them, but the c does because it's a minus 3. Then all I'm going to do is, everywhere I see those numbers or those letters in the minus b formula, I'm just going to sub them in. Now, I'm not going to write out the minus b formula every time, because I'm going to do a few of these. But I recommend you guys do in the exam anyway. But hopefully you'll be able to see what I've just done here. And you'd sub it in like so. Now, none of the questions I've noticed that I've picked have it saying in surd form, but if it says leave your answer in surd form, it just means leave it in the square root kind of symbol, like back here on this previous question. Now that was the correct answer because it said the 2 decimal places, but if it had said in surd form, the calculator told me that those 2 things are the same. So if it said in surd form, leave it as 2 minus root 11. If it says decimal places, leave it as the minus 1.32. For this one, hang on, I have to type it all in again. I should probably pause it actually, hang on. So I just typed it in there. But the idea is, if it had said in surd form instead of 3 decimal places, it gives me something horrendous. It gives me this. And that's what you would leave your answer for if it said in surd form. It does not though, so I'm going to press SD in my calculator, or change, or whatever the new calculators call it, and I'm going to write down the actual decimal of 0.057, that is a point, 571,891,3883. But then it says 3 decimal places, so I wanted to go 3 decimals after, which is in between the 7 and the 1. I overshot the line there ever so slightly. But because I need to stop at the 7, I need to look at the number directly after it, which is a 1. That's is that 5 or higher? No. So I don't have to round the number up at all. So I'm just going to leave it as 0.057. Now, I'm going to just go back into my calculator with the arrow key. Do not try clear out the whole thing and write it all again. Just change the plus to a minus. And you'll notice that, well, you won't notice because you can't see this, but I'm going to write out the actual real decimal for a second here. Again, just to show you the rounding process. Whoops, that's a 9. But the 3 decimal places means I need to go again between the 5 and the 7, or the 7 and the 1. Between the 7 and the 1, good lord. And then we need to look at the number afterwards, which is a 1. So it's going to be minus 6.557 because the 1 is not 5 or higher, so I don't need to round up. In the quadratic, there were x's, so it's going to be x equals and x equals. Sometimes you'll get quadratics where they change the letter out, where instead of an x, it'll be a y. All that means is down here, this would be a y instead, and like obviously here as well. That's literally the only difference, though. Nothing else is different. You have to keep on your toes about that. Another one here, right? I'm just going to try it again. Again, you can pause this and just try it yourself if you want to first and just see. But I'm just going to launch into it here. So again, A is 2, B is minus 7, and C is minus 3. Sub them in, you get this. So there's a couple of things that people will constantly make mistakes on, and I'm actually going to make a note of them here. I'm going to talk about them in a second. The biggest issue is the b squared, the bit that I have here that's minus 7 squared. You have to write it like this. You cannot write it where the squared is inside the bracket. That is a different thing. And that is the biggest issue I see people do, or they just won't write the brackets in at all. And if you do that, the calculator will just do it completely different. So do not do that. You need to specifically write the minus 7 inside the brackets and the squared outside of it. That's a major issue. Everybody makes that mistake. Sometimes they put a plus instead of a minus for the 4, but that's in the log tables. Just be careful. You can see that yourself. And I would advise you the whole time, maybe I should have said this as the start, the whole time you're doing this, on the calculator, press the fraction button first. It's a lot easier to press the fraction button first. If you don't, you'll type in the minus bracket minus 7, and then you'll get to, or you'll type in the whole top part, and then if you press the fraction button, it'll only put the square root part on top of the fraction. So all that, just take that from that I'm saying, press the fraction button first. That's all. Now, if you'll excuse me, I am going to just type this in, because I can't do it in my hand when it's these horrible decimal ones. Again, I got a surd form of 7 plus root 73 over 4, but they didn't ask for surd form, so I'm going to press SD, change it into decimals. The decimals they gave me are 3.886000936, I think. And then it says 2 decimal places, so I need to go 2 numbers after the decimal, which is the 8 and the 8. Is the number after it 5 or bigger? Yes, so I need to change it to 3.89. I need to round up 1. If I go back into the calculator using the arrow keys, press delete, put in a minus, press equals, get another surd nonsense thing, but I'm going to write it as the decimal, and I'm going to write it as 0.386000933. 2 decimal places, though, again, is the first 2 numbers after the decimal. So 38 is the number afterwards bigger than 5 or bigger? Yes, it is. So I'm going to round it up to 39. Those are my 2 answers. It was an x in the formula, so it's going to be x equals, and then we're done. So I suppose now I'm going to take this moment to actually explain what you're doing when you do the minus b, or when you do the brackets way. Because again, they're both the same thing. It's just the brackets way was a quicker way for us to do it back in the day when our calculators were dog shit. What you're actually doing is here, these things, right, are called the roots of the equation. And if you recall, a quadratic, and anything with an x squared will always look like a u shape if it's a positive x squared, or an n shape if it's a negative x squared, you know, smiley and frowny faces. What you're finding is, you're finding out where they would cross over the x-axis. So this one is a positive x squared, so it's going to be a smiley face. And these 2 numbers here mean that that's going to cross over the x-axis at minus 0.39 on the x-axis here, and 3.89 on the x-axis here. So the y-axis would be somewhere like here, right? That's what you're finding. You're finding the roots. You're finding out where it crosses over the x-axis. The smaller number is always on the left on the number line. That's why I put the 0 minus 1 on the left and the plus on the right. Yeah, so that's what this actually is. Now you'll notice here is the newer, like the new age kind of junior cycle thing they're trying to do, trying to make it all like real life and quirky and stuff. And look, there's a color photo because you guys live in the new generation, right? A company is making a large rectangular poster as shown in the diagram on the right. I don't need this. I hope you can't see that Windows Defender thing that's going up. I guess I just get rid of it. Oh no, he's gone. So that sentence is just like, hey guys, welcome to the question. There's, you know, a poster. Okay. The top section will be a square image. I suppose I'm not going to get rid of that because that's important that it's a square. I'm assuming they mean like from this dotted line. Okay, well, the thing didn't really work, but up around here like this is a square. Oh yeah, they say square image on the thing actually. So because it says square image actually here, you could potentially just get rid of that. The bottom section will be a rectangle of height 0.5 meters, which they have in, which will have the sponsor's logo, which they have in. Okay, I'm going to get rid of that. Because sometimes the words just trick people, and they don't like it because their brain is trying to process every sentence at the same time. If you can read them one at a time and go, do I need that or will I not need that? Also, I wouldn't actually advise in your exam to actually scribble over the stuff. You need to like weirdly visually do that, or alternatively, highlight the stuff that is important rather than scribble out the stuff that isn't important. The width of the poster is X, as shown. That's in the diagram again, so I'm going to get rid of that. So in the real junior cert, don't scribble out all this stuff like I just did. It just means there's nothing there for you to highlight, though. There's nothing there that's hugely important. You can kind of forget all of that because it's all represented in here. At least that's my opinion. If you don't like doing it that way, that's fine, but I genuinely think that's handier. Sorry, let me just make sure. Okay. So, write the total height of the poster in terms of X. Well, so this isn't going to be the minus B formula bit just yet, but we'll see, right, how it progresses into that. I just thought I'd do the whole thing out so you can kind of see how sometimes they build it up into a real life scenario where you couldn't possibly imagine a quadratic equation could come into it. Write the total height of the poster in X. Well, you'll notice that the width is X. That's the only X they have, right? You might be saying, how the hell are we going to figure out what this is? But I think you'll all agree that once we figure out the height of this square image, we just add it to 0.5 to find the height of the full guy. Now the thing is, how do we do that though? Well, the important thing was that this is a square image, so this side on the this length on the side would be the same as this length along this dotted line here. But we know what that is. We know it's X because they told us down the very bottom, and it's all the same. It's like consistently X, right? So this length here would be X. It's very hard for me to draw it because of the colors, so actually the future has backfired. But because it's a square, they're all X all around all the sides. That means the full height would be whatever the X is. If we knew what the X was, let's say we knew it was 7, we'd add it to 0.5. So even though we don't know what the X is, we're still just going to add it to 0.5 because that is literally the process we would have gone through in numbers. If we had numbers, we would have done that. So we're just going to kind of highlight that that's what we would have done had we known what X was. Hey guys, if I knew what X was, the answer would be X plus 0.5. That's what we're saying here. So I guess they probably wanted in here actually. But the total area of the poster is 50 meters squared. Show that blah, right? Now, that one can be very tricky for people to just kind of comprehend what you have to do. But how do you find the area of a rectangle? You do length by width. We know the width is X, and we know the length or height, alternatively, is X plus 0.5. So it's like a rectangle like this, where this is X and this is X plus 0.5. I know I didn't draw it in proportion, I know. But how do you find area? You do length multiplied by width. So I'm going to multiply X by X plus 0.5. There's actually shenanigans here, I'm just realizing they probably did. And it's equal to 50, right? Because they told us what the area actually is. They told us it's 50. So we know that if we do the length by the width, we should get 50. Now, we're not going to know that because the x's wouldn't have come out as a real number. But we're going to say it should be 50. So we can just put an equals 50 at the end, right? Area formula equals 50. I wouldn't worry about that too much for this video. This is supposed to just be for the minus b formula. Multiply that in. X by x is x squared. X by 0.5 is 0.5x. Just because, like, you know, x by 3 would have been 3x. It's the exact same with any other number. I'm going to minus 50 from both sides, or bring the 50 over and make it a minus, whichever way floats your boat. So we'd have 0.5x minus 50 equals 0. Now, people might have been confused at this point how to turn this into the top one, but all they did was they multiplied the whole line by 2 because they didn't want the 0.5. And how do you get rid of a half? You double it. You multiply the whole line by 2. And if you do that, now I don't have room here, right? 2x squared plus, because x squared by 2 is 2x squared, sorry. 0.5x by 2 is just 1x. So you can write 1x. I'm not going to, though, because I want you guys to realize, even if you do it, the examiners won't do it, and the books and the, you know, no one else will do it. So you need to just be comfortable with it, even if you don't want to do it yourself, that's fine. And then minus 50 by 2 is minus 100. Oh, look, we did the thing. We're class, right? Now, on to the bit we're actually looking for. Solve the equation. Even if you didn't have any of the rest of the question under your belt, right? It just says solve the equation, and it's an x squared and x and a number, and it's equal to 0. So that's just automatically the minus b formula. It says to find the value of x. Yeah, well, that's what the minus b formula would do. And they say in this question, the value of x is the width of the poster. So if we solve what x is, it should also be the width of the poster. And that'll be happy days for us, I'm sure, and all our poster needs. Give your answer in blah, 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 blah. We're not going to care about the answers just yet. Every time you guys read, give your answer in blah, you're like, oh, geez, I wouldn't have a clue how to get to that bit. Do not worry about that until you have an answer. You can't present your answer in a way unless you have it. So do not worry about how you're going to present it until you have it. At the very end, even if you don't present it in the right way, you lose maybe a mark or two. Obviously, try your hardest to do it. But do not, the amount of people that I see will read that, give your answer sentence, and have that just throw them entirely, and they just get 0 because they can't do anything. Don't read that bit until you have an answer to present. So, A is equal to 2, B is equal to 1. Hopefully you can all see that. It's a sneaky 1 in front of the X. And then C is equal to minus 100. Again, here, when you have like the real exam and you have space to write it in, you should write out the formula as it is in your log tables and then sub it in. But I am not going to because I am lazy and don't have the room or the will or effort. So just sub it in though the way you're supposed to. Like, how many minus b formulas do you think I've done in my life at this point? You know what I mean? I dread to think, actually. But you sub all that in. Now I'm going to try it on my calculator again. Sorry, you won't be able to see that. Of course, press the fraction button first. Literally type it in the way I've written it. Or you have written it if you tried this yourself before you actually played this. But I doubt a lot of you guys. I don't have a faith. I don't believe. Again, hopefully I haven't made a mistake. But what I'm getting is, and I get the weird third version first, but I'm going to put it in decimals because that makes more sense for the width of a movie poster. You know, you don't want the square root of whatever the hell. So we get this number. I left out an 8, I think. 4, 8, yep. And then if you round that, now here's the thing, right? I'm going to get the other answer first. I'm going to get the minus one as well, and then we're going to talk about how to present the answers, right? Because that's a whole other thing. The other number is minus 7.3254858449. Now, here's the thing. Now we have our answers. Now we can look at the give your answer because we have an answer to give. Give your answer in meters correct in your centimeter. Okay. How many centimeters are there in a meter? A lot of junior cert people don't know this anymore. It's 100. There are 100 centimeters in a meter, right? So that means we have to go 2 numbers after the decimal place. I don't know if you know that because if you think about it, it's kind of like saying an 82 out of 100. And if you ever got to 100 out of 100, you just add another meter on here, right? You'd add another 1 onto the 6. So if it's a very weird way they did that, but even if you don't get that, even if you didn't understand that, it's not a lot of marks. It's try your best to understand this, but if you're like literally just cannot figure this bit out that I'm about to do, don't stress highly about it. Get the other stuff, get the minus b formula done, you'll be okay. But it says 100 centimeters in a meter, so anything below 100 would not be a meter. So if you think about it, that's 2 decimal places because every number up until 100 would be 2 numbers. So basically what this means is we want 2 decimal places. This one is the number after the gap that I've picked, 5 or higher. Yes, so this would be 6.83 meters, where that's really 6 meters and 83 centimeters. To be honest, yeah, they worded it in a way that I think you could argue that it's not, I think it's a bit, not flimsy, just a bit, it's not fully, it's not perfect. It's not perfectly, you could argue different interpretation of it. I think, but is the number after the 2 5 or higher? It is, so that's why I rounded this up to a 3. Now the last thing is, and this happens in honors and ordinary and junior cert and leaving cert and all of the good things. You'll notice, well, I'll tell you this first. You'll notice x. So we have x equals here and we have x equals here. The problem is, x was supposed to be the width of a movie poster. You cannot have a width be a minus number, so you actually disregard that number, and you have to kind of do that and then highlight this one. You have to be like, we're going with this one because you can't have a minus value for the x. However, geez, a movie poster being 6.8 meters, is that right? I guess. Okay, kind of looks like a shit movie as well, but like it's okay. Yeah, okay. No, that made me doubt myself for a second, but like it's I guess it's right. Um. Anyway, so the thing is, you have to look at it in kind of a real life scenario and be like, well, you can't have a minus number. That wouldn't make any sense. And kind of a hint in the question is, you notice they said value singular. Even though the minus b formula should give us two answers, they didn't specify values. They specified value singular. Um. So sometimes you get hints like that in the question. When it's just a basic minus b formula like up here, you don't, that won't be a thing because there's no context to what the x is. So if you get a minus, you get a plus, you have to be like, yeah, both of them count. Because I don't know why they wouldn't. So you just put them both down. Here, because specifically we know x is the width of a movie poster, we go, you can't have minuses. That's ridiculous. Yeah, hopefully that's okay. Now, the bit we're about to do now is a leaving cert one. So leaving cert honors, right? Everyone else should leave, right? Because this is some hectic nonsense that is going to scare the wits out of everybody, right? So only people who should be looking at the next one would be leaving cert honor level, and even then, I know you don't want to because you can already see it has an I in it. Okay. Okay. We'll give it a shot though, right? And the reason why I specified this one from Leaving Cert Honors is because up until Leaving Cert Honors, they kind of like coddle you in the sense that they don't give you all of the possible minus b values. As we saw, um, as I kind of pointed out earlier, the whole point of the minus b formula is to find the roots of it and to find out where it crosses the x-axis. However, if you think about it, you could also have an example of a U shape that just doesn't go down far enough to the x-axis. Now that's not horizontal enough for me to be okay with it being the x-axis. So imagine this is the U shape. It just doesn't touch. There's a big gap in between the U shape and the thing. So you might say, oh well, it doesn't have roots then. Wrong, idiot. It doesn't have real roots. However, a topic you guys have done in Leaving Cert Honors is imaginary. And what's the opposite of real? It is imaginary. So even though it has no real roots, it does still have two imaginary roots. And that's what we have to talk about here, right? Oh god, I'm gonna spell imaginary wrong, am I? Imaginary. No, I think so. I think we're good. So it will have two imaginary roots, and all that means is that an I will be involved. So you notice in this one, literally, it does say 1 plus I is a root of this equation. Find its other root in the form, same shape, but just numbers in place of the m and the n. Oh, where the m and the n are this and the blah, 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 blah. That scares me. Don't look at it then. Don't look at it. So one thing you want to watch out for this question, and I don't really want to bring it up because it's going into complex numbers, which I do have a video on, so this is probably mentioned in there actually now that I think about it, but I'm going to do it anyway. Don't forget that if there's no i's in here, then the conjugate root theorem would hold, and the alternate root would be 1 minus I, because it's just the conjugate of whatever the original root is. However, that doesn't work here because we do have I values here and here. As soon as you can witness an I in the quadratic, no bueno, it's a no-go, right? So don't do the conjugate root theorem for this question. I'll also point out that it is a quadratic. I called it a quadratic, and that might ruffle a few feathers, right? But the idea is it's still a z squared, a number with a z in front of it, and a number on its own. Now, there's problems with that. Instead of the x's, they use z's, but that's okay. That's just them highlighting that it's more so going to fall into the complex number field as opposed to just real numbers. And the number in front of the z and the number that takes place at the c, there's two parts of them, but that's because one part is real and one part is imaginary, and together they form a complex number. Wow. Now, so all we're going to do, now there's a couple of ways they're going to do this. Actually, does this one work? It must work. Just what I mean is, I wonder if it's going to work for the way you guys are used to it. Okay, so I'm going to actually write it all out and just make sure. B squared minus 4ac. Sometimes it doesn't work in the way that like you would guys, it's still doable, but it's not done in a way that you guys would actually know how to do in leaving cert. A is 1, B is minus 2 plus I, C is 3 plus minus I. Hopefully you're all okay with that, right? Because they just fit the same format. It's just that each of the B and the C have two parts, which is scary. I get it, but it's still doable. So instead of the B, I'm going to put in minus 2 plus I, which also looks scary. I understand that, but trust me, it gets worse because we're going to have minus 2 plus I inside of this B that was being squared. Again, the squared has to go on the outside of the bracket. That's the minus 4. The A is 1. That's nice. The C is 3 minus I. And then we're going to do 2 times 1 on the bottom. Don't forget, of course, I squared is always equal to -1. They will always say that, but just remember it yourself if you can. Now, this one you can't do on your calculator. I can, because I have a cool calculator. You guys do not. So what we have to do is we have to multiply that minus into this bracket here and here, right? So we're going to have to multiply this by this and this by this. So we're going to end up with minus is a plus. Then we're going to end up with minus I. Then the plus minus is still chilling. And then we're going to do this. Now we have to square this out. And I might take it as an aside and just show you how I'm doing that, just to avoid making a mess inside, any more of a mess than there is already. You multiply that out, you would get this. But don't forget the I squared. Now the 2 minus 2i's would make minus 4i, and the I squared would turn into -1. So then you'd have 4 minus 1 is 3. You'd end up with 3 minus 4i. So we're going to have 3 minus 4i instead of the squared bit. Hopefully you're okay with the b squared. I took it out here, did it out, put in the answer over here. Now, -4, the multiplying by 1 is irrelevant. If you multiply anything by 1, you can kind of ignore it, right? However, if you were multiplying 3 things together, don't forget you multiply 2 together, get the answer, and then multiply the answer by the third one. Don't try and multiply all 3 together. If one of them is a 1, you can ignore it, and it's fine. Otherwise, it gets trippy. So -4 by 3 is -12. -4 by -4 by -i is +4i. You'll notice, now I shouldn't really be doing it just yet, but I'm just happy it worked out, that the 4i's would cancel because there's a plus version and a minus version. Thank God, because if you end up with a minus or with an I inside of a square root, you have to do it a complete different way, and that's what I was talking about. I was afraid that it wasn't going to work out like that. 2 by 1 on the bottom is just 2, so you're left with 2 minus I plus minus the square root of, now 3 minus 12 is -9. This is what I was afraid of. Let me just make sure we're chilling with this. And yeah, okay, no, we should be fine. We should be fine. I was panicked for a split second there, but it was another question I thought we were referencing. Now, again, this is why you can't really do it as well on your calculator, because what is the square root of -9? Your calculator won't do it. It'll say error. But because you've done complex numbers and you're a big boy now, you'll realize that the square root of 9 would have been 3. Square root of -9, we just say, is 3i. If there's a minus inside of a square root, that renders it incapable of being done on the calculator. What you do is you take the number itself, get the square root of that, and just stick an I next to it. It's kind of like the minus inside of the square root translates to the I. That's where the I's have all been coming this whole time. I don't know if you know that. So, this would be 2 minus I plus or minus root, or no, not root, not -9 anymore, 3i now, right? Because all I did was the square root of -9 turned into 3i, right? If you don't really get that, I guess I've done it on the complex numbers video, so maybe just have a look there. I don't know. Yeah, now you notice that we have, if you have the plus version over here, you have the minus version over here. Just doing a comma to highlight the difference between the two, that's all. You notice just one with a plus, one with a minus. Here it would be 2 plus 2i over 2. Here it would be 2 minus 4i over 2. Divide everything by 2, you get 1 plus I, and then you get here 1 minus 2i. You notice in the question at the very top, it does say 1 plus I is a root, and the minus b formula will give you both roots, so that's handy. We know that one was you know, pre-existing root that they handed to us. It said find the other root, and that's what we've done. We found the other root. So, in complex numbers, they can either ask you like this, where they give you one and ask for the other. I do remember a question, and I just could not for the life of me find it, where it just gave you a quadratic and asked for what are the roots, and you just had to do the minus b formula to get both of them, but it's the same thing here. It's just they didn't give you one at the start. The reason why they gave you one at the start here is because an alternative way of doing this would have been long division, because if 1 plus I is a root, you could have turned it into a factor form, because if we know it's a root, we can say z is equal to 1 plus I, because we could sub 1 plus I in for z. But then if you turn it into a factor, you'd end up with this, and you do long division where you divide that guy into the original quadratic, and then it would end up with the other factor, which you could then use to manufacture the root. That's another way of doing it. I prefer my way. I prefer the minus b formula, but there was a case where the minus b formula, it's not that it didn't work, it just didn't work as far as your knowledge goes. I might have done that in the video, I can't remember, they're all starting to blur together. So hopefully that's okay. Hopefully that's the minus b formula. A few done out, just so you can see, because it comes up all the time for everybody. There's nobody here who avoids the minus b formula. Hopefully it's not too bad. Hopefully you can kind of see from how I did it, the steps. yeah, there's not really much summing up I should do here because everyone at this point should just still be honors leaving cert. So, yeah, I don't think there's anything else I want to say. All right, peace out.